Welcome to the Workforce Connections podcast, where we discuss workforce development in Southern Nevada. Here's your host.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the WC Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, my friend and fellow Vegas Chamber trustee, principal analyst for applied analysis, Jeremy Aguero. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
We are excited too. I think Jeremy really needs no introduction here in the community. We were just talking off camera. I met him almost 30 years ago, and I believe, again, there's very little people that don't know Jeremy, read about Jeremy. But to get us started, please share with us and our viewers, our listeners, where you were born, where you grew up, went to school, college. Take us to your first job out of college.
Oh, wow. So my family moved here in 1905, my mother's side of the family, to help survey the mountains. So this is the community that I know. My father's family immigrated from Cuba in the late 1950s, moved here in the early 1960s. My dad was, I think, 8 years old when they immigrated from Cuba. And so my dad was in the first graduating class of Valley High School, and I was in the 24th graduating class of Valley High School. And again, this is sort of the community only community I've ever known. And it doesn't mean I was born here. I was actually born in Forest Grove, Oregon. And that's because my dad was going to school. My mom and dad were there when I was born. I lived there like the first 6 months of my life and then came back here. My trajectory through elementary school, middle school, high school was pretty regular, all here in Southern Nevada. I went to UNLV after graduating.
Tell me the school names. Did you go to Orr?
No. I went to Lewis E. Rowe Elementary School. I went to Cannon High School, and I went to Valley High.
Yeah, those are the old original schools.
That's right, the only true high school here in Southern Nevada. I miss it, and we had a great experience there. And I had some friends that, including my business partner, that I've had since throughout that entire school experience.
Were you in Valley when Andrew Agassi was there?
I was not. He was a little bit older than me, I believe.
Was before. Greg Maddox too?
Greg Maddox was a little before me. He went with my business partner Brian's sister was in the Maddox class. But I know that because in our PE room they had Maddox's uniform with his name across it. So cool. Everybody knew that that's where it was from. So it was a great experience. So went to UNLV, where I had a number of different courses of study. Didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, and I took a class. With a honors class with a professor by the name of Shannon Bybee. And after the class, I really enjoyed the class. After the class, Shannon kind of invited me up to.
This was in economics, right?
No, this wasn't economics. I don't remember what the class was. It was it may have been something in hospitality. It may have been something in the law, business law, something along those. I don't really remember the very first course. But Shannon came to me and afterwards and said, "Hey, why don't you come into the office?" And we talked a little bit, and we struck up a friendship. And he kind of really took me under his wing and said, "You know what? I told him I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do, which is why I was in this honors class, kind of a random honors class." And he said, "Here's what we're going to do. You're going to come in and see me every semester, and we're going to go through your school schedule, and we're going to do some cool stuff here." And he's the one that pushed me over to doing economic work and work in finance. And he made me do a bunch of independent studies. One of the things he had me do was go interview every CEO on the Las Vegas Strip. Wow. And just sit down with them and talk to them about how they managed people and what they saw and all those type of things. I don't know that I saw it then, but man, was it an incredible education when I was there, being able to do that. He had me take a bunch of upper divisional sort of classes and sort of picked it. And Shannon started the International Gaming Institute, or at least I think that he was the initial executive director of that. And man, did I learn a lot from him. And I didn't have a lot of direction that way. It wasn't sort of a conversation maybe I would normally have with my parents, but I didn't. And, he was always kind of watching out for me that way. During my senior year as an undergraduate, I was looking for an internship, and I ended up interning with Coopers & Lybrand. It's now PricewaterhouseCoopers. I worked there. In that capacity, I got to work on all kinds of projects. I would do anything they would let me do. I built some models for folks like Boyd and the Howard Hughes company back then. Wow. And this was also kind of leading up to when Enron was taking place, and when the accounting firms were really separating their consulting work from their accounting work, and so there was some uncertainty in terms of some of the future of that. But I loved it. I felt like I was good at it. I felt like, look, when it comes to the numbers, I had an aptitude for it, and so I spent my last year of schoolwork working at Cooper's and sort of learning that kind of stuff. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. Those folks were awesome. I learned a ton. As I started to get through that, they asked me to sort of go this like accounting track, right? I don't know that they thought there was uncertainty. I don't really remember the uncertainty. I really liked the consulting side, but I didn't think accounting was what I wanted to do. That didn't seem like a fit for my personality and what I would really enjoy. But when I left Cooper's, Shannon, Dr. Bybee, came back to me and said, hey, I'm working on this paper for the Federal Gaming Impact Study Commission, which at the time was a group that was going around the entire country studying the impacts of casino-based gaming throughout the United States. And he said, I'm working with Vince Eade, another professor that's just a remarkable human being at UNLV, and they were working on this paper and asked if I would come and help them. I said, you're darn right. I'm happy to do it. I would love to do it. And so that was sort of my first kind of entree into sort of the economics of hospitality in the industry that we have. And frankly, that opened up a bunch of doors for me. Concurrent with that, as sort of time went on, I sort of did that, and then Cooper's hired me back to do finish some of the work that I had done for them, and that created an opportunity. And so, I kind of had two clients. Like, why not? Let's give this a shot and try to create a bit of a consulting firm out there. And that, looking back, that seems pretty arrogant, and I got really lucky in terms of doing that. But it opened up all kinds of doors for me. I worked for some real estate companies. I did some, basic market analysis, and frankly, I started a firm under the general belief that if I could help somebody do whatever they were trying to do better, they would hire me again. And Shannon opened up some doors. I did some market analysis with this great guy. His name was Bill Dougal. I'm sure not most people don't remember Bill. I think he developed the old Marina Hotel that was here, wow. Right? This guy when I was working with him, he was just an incredible resource of information because he had seen all kinds of stuff. He was also pretty old. He'd been around for a while, and so I could kind of help him do some of the things. He and I did an analysis, in the Quad Cities. We drove past an old cinder block baseball field, and he said, when I was a boy, I saw Babe Ruth hit a home run out of that. So you can imagine how much experience this guy has kind of had. He was a World War II pilot. I learned a ton from working with him. And, again, kind of a fledgling consulting firm, but, enough to stay busy. I talked Brian Gordon, my business partner, to come and work with me. And right about that time, really two things happened. One, Shannon Bybee came to me and said he was dying. Broke my heart. He was my mentor and somebody that I cared. I was really close with him all the way through school and all the way through the things that I was living with. But he knew he was going to pass away, and he made me promise him that I would go to law school. I think he thought that the law school that was being created at UNLV was a tremendous asset we'd have. He also sat me down and said, you're good at some things. There's some things you could be a lot better at, and law school will help you be better at those things. And he was right. I was in the second class of the night. I went to school at night because I was, working. I had applied analysis during the day. And the other thing is that was right around September 11th. And right after that, you'll recall, Governor Gwynn created the Governor's Task Force on Tax Policy at that point. And, some things were happening during that. These things were not necessarily the result of each other, but were happening sort of concurrently. And Governor Gwynn, I think in a very brilliant way, tapped Guy Hobbs to be the chairman of that. And Guy and I had formed a relationship. He was one that I had worked with on some things. And he said, hey, will you chair the technical working group of that? Okay, put me in, Coach. Let's go. And Governor Gwynn reached out and asked if I would do that. And, it's been what I believe is if a governor calls and asks for help, you have two answers, yes or yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, I suppose, if we have a woman that's a governor. And so the answer to that was yes. And I spent a year working with Guy and that group on all things tax policy in the state of Nevada. There was no better education, right? Working with folks like Guy Hobbs and Mike Alistoy and Marvin Levitt and these type of things, who I don't know if those names are going to resonate with everyone in your eyes, but these are like the Mount Rushmore of tax policy. And the fourth person that's up there is a woman by the name of Carol Villardo that many of us that have been around for a while knew and probably miss. And I got to work with all of them during this period. And it was a long sort of period of working through all of that. But, from that perspective, it just opened up doors. And I realize you wanted me to sort of talk about sort of how I got that sort of first kind of job and what I'm doing today. And I suppose there's things in the interim. I had this terrific paper route when I was 13. I had probably the most educational job of my life at Rockaway Precrast, which I lasted one day because I just couldn't make these things that I was supposed to make. And I had so much resin on my jeans, I had to go home and cut myself out of my pants. I worked to put myself through school. I worked at Bally's Coffee Shop, which probably taught me more about customer service than I ever knew. But the other things that I've talked to you about has really kind of put me on the trajectory for applied analysis as we know it today.
So, Jeremy, I think that, that's such a journey. And I have a couple of follow-up questions, but that brings you really close to the years I met you, early 2000s. And at the beginning, as you said now, of 2 or more decades of involvement with policy in our state. You've talked about the beginnings, but I know after that, for the next 20 years, you've been involved in major things. Most recent ones, of course, the Raiders of Legion Stadium, the A's now. So before I ask you the next question, I just wanted to, I made a mental note to say, when you were in Valley, did you catch Principal Montoya, or did he also come after you?
I think he came after me.
Okay, Ronald Montoya came after
I think so.
All right. So when it comes to applied analysis, Jeremy, again, I know, but I want our listeners to get it straight from you. I mean, as a board of trustee member at the Vegas Chamber, at the LVGA, the work with MJ that we do with the RTC, we are all organizations that trust you and feel blessed to have you as an asset here to really help us answer questions and to help us shape policy. But for somebody who hasn't worked with applied analysis, can you tell them, what does the firm do?
Yeah.
Like you just said, you help folks get things accomplished that they want to do. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, and I hope you know, and I hope your listeners know, that it is those relationships that allow us to get things done. Look, our firm, I should say simply, Applied Analysis is an economic, fiscal, and policy consultancy. We use data to help our clients make better decisions. That's what I would say to anyone that asks me what Applied Analysis does. But I think you and I sort of understand our role a little bit differently. We're bench strength. Right? We're the folks that when somebody needs to have something done, an analysis developed, they have a question, they want to think about bringing legislation forward, they want to think about a new business venture, right? They tap us and say, can you help us get this done? Right? We're not the ones that are ultimately going to be crafting the legislation. Those are going to be governors or legislators. We're not the ones that are going to bring a team to Las Vegas. Those are going to be the Mark Davises and the Mark Bedaines and the Dan Ventrellis of the world, or the Mr. Fisher and Mr. Caval and Sandy Dean and that whole group. Right? Those are the ones that make those decisions to do it. We help facilitate that, right? My office is an office of people that are just pure doers. We write the memo, we write the analysis, we do the spreadsheet, we do the analysis in order to help people do what they are trying to do and do it effectively. And the entirety of our existence as a company is predicated on the success of our clients, right? I mean, we've seen some clients grow in just amazing ways, right? There's certainly some of our hospitality clients, right, which started just here in Las Vegas, have expanded all over the world. And look, some of the ones that we're most proud of, you think about it in terms of the Raiders and the A's, and we're very proud of the work that we did on all those things. But I will tell you, the organization that I'm most proud of to have worked on is the UFC. Right? We started working with them 15, 16 years ago. And I will never, ever forget that very first meeting with the Fertitta brothers and Dana White when they were talking about what they're trying to accomplish and how they want to do it. And I doubt they have the same memory associated with that. I mean, it's old and we're small.
I wonder what the value of the company was then.
I don't know, but I mean, they were, only starting to talk about how do they introduce themselves to international markets. I don't know how many economic analyses that we've done for them and other markets, but I don't think there is any greater example of success in Southern Nevada than UFC. I think what they've been able to do has redefined an industry, and I think their leadership has been unbelievable. Now at the helm is Lawrence Epstein, and I think he is an absolute visionary relative to not just sports, but the business of sports. And I think he's leading the way relative to that, and it's something I'm very proud of.
Yeah, I think those of us who have had the fortune to work with you and your team, Jeremy, know that it's not easy to do because data, a lot of times, and even analysis, me having spent 20 years in the hotels, is the first words that come to your mind is not exciting and vibrant and fun. But you guys happen to bring that into your analysis. Not only is it effective and helpful, but I think the process, at least when I've worked with you, has always been discovering and fun. And this is why also you do a lot of public speaking whenever it's the LVGA Insight perspective. These things we always hear from you. And that's our next question. For those who don't get to go to this event and hear about how you and your company project the economic opportunities and challenges for our region, what can you tell our listeners that you see in the forefront? Now, of course, there's a lot of things that are changing, including recent elections, but what do you see as economic opportunities and challenges for Southern Nevada?
Yeah, look, I have some real concern about where we are, and I'll get to that in a moment. That said, I think I have to start where just answering the question directly. As you and I sit here and we have this conversation, the United States is the highest GDP it's ever been. The stock market and equity markets are performing better than we've ever seen. The unemployment rate is roughly at the rate of full employment, which is to say that almost everybody that wants a job has a job. And we've seen you and I've had conversations about the need for more workers to come in, right? Here in the state of Nevada and here in Southern Nevada, we rank at or near the nation's highest in terms of job formation. We have population and migration continues to come in. We've got $30 billion worth of projects that are planned, proposed, or under construction. Taxable retail sales failed last month, but are still relatively high. And while housing prices are not affordable today, in comparison to some other markets, we are doing pretty good overall. With all of that said, I have real concerns that during COVID, we pumped a ton of stimulus in, and that has lifted our economy, has allowed people to have a level of consumer spending that is not sustainable, that the combination of a federal deficit that continues to skyrocket, I think we should all be concerned about, and the fact that individual debt is now at the highest level we've ever seen in United States history, right? These are unsustainable trajectories that we have. We've seen even things as much as like some of the gaming numbers that are out there, some of the room revenue numbers. And I love the fact that our tourists are coming here and everything from sports to entertainment to incredible concerts to the world's best conventions are happening here, and they're drawing people and we're getting the benefit of that spending. That's wonderful to us. But I worry that a reckoning is coming. A level of sustainable spending that we cannot keep. I worry that our ability to be as competitive as we've been historically relative to be the place that you want to go to start a business. You want to go to have a better life because the American dream still exists here. I feel like we're losing some of that market share, and it makes me very nervous. And I will tell you, I get asked a lot, what's like the number one risk that you see? And people don't really think about water or availability of a qualified workforce, and all of those I think are extremely important. The number one risk that I think is out there is complacency. I think the fact that so many of us are benefiting from all of the remarkable decisions that were made by folks who came before us. We live in an incredible community at an incredible time. I really worry about the fact, are we making the same investments? Are we doing all the things that we need to do to make sure that we're leaving the same thing for the folks that come after us? I have a real fear, and you and I had a dialogue about this a little bit in a meeting we were in last week, that we may be the first generation to do better than our parents and better than our children. And that is not a legacy that I want for us as a country or a legacy for us here in this community.
Yeah, that's sombering, but I agree with you. I know, and I've heard you say it before, as recent as the last LVGA meeting, and it is a concern. When you see our economy that has evolved again, and you've been a part of it, Jeremy. When I came here in 1987, there was no doubt we were a tourism and gambling town, and we became the world capital of that. Nobody has the infrastructure we have, even though some have tried in Dubai and other places. But this tourism sector, of which I spent 20 years of my life, is also evolving, Jeremy. As you said, and I saw it in '89 when the Mirage went up. Before that, it was the times of the 99-cent shrimp cocktails and the 7 and 77 surf and turf specials, and everything was a value. But to Steve Wynn in the Mirage, which a property that I opened, brought about restaurants like we've never had before, with Kobe steaks at $120 a steak, and two guys with white tigers that sold out nightly, and an exploding volcano and dolphins and so forth. So it really changed us forever. And now, as you said, we are so different. Do you see, besides adding world-class retail and dining and shows, as you said, and things like the Sphere and so many innovative things happening here, do you see anything else happening in that tourism sector in the sense of evolution? I've heard about, for example, a project on the southern western part of town where they're envisioning another NBA-style arena. Yep. I think it's the Oak Group. But so what do you see in the future for this tourism industry?
Sure. So I think we're in the middle of it right now, right? I think we're in the middle of this sports and entertainment evolution that's really happened here. We have 325,000 seats in major venues here. It's more than any other market in the entire United States. And think about all the things that you can see here that you can't see anywhere else. And think about the fact that, Allegiant Stadium gets built, and then we have something like the Super Bowl that's possible here. We have something like Formula One that's possible here. Right? So I think we are continuing to see what that's going to happen. I think the A's are going to open up their stadium. That's not just going to host baseball. Mm-hmm. I think it will host other major events that will take place there. The Oakview Group, Tim Leiweke is an absolute genius in terms of the development of these type of things. And I think he's got one of the best executives working for him that knows how to make a project possible. That's Mark Bedane. That's Mark, right? Yeah. And so, the combination of those guys, I would not underestimate their ability to do something that is going to be magical. And, you were in the hospitality industry. It's not just about building incredible projects. It's about building the next reason for people to come to Las Vegas. And, you think about things like new venues, like the Park MGM and the music venue that it has there, which is just absolutely amazing and brings in folks like Bruno Mars, right, to come in. And then, look, last weekend you have things like Sting and Billy Joel, which, and then a football game on the same weekend that we have Formula One, right? When you and I were growing up,
we had the Rebels
here. You didn't have any of that kind of thing, right? It just didn't exist. So I think that evolution is continuing today. There is a limit to it. I don't know that we know exactly where that limit is, but I think we ought to be mindful of the fact that, the number of tickets, the number of tourists are not infinite relative to that. Beyond that, I think that there are other evolutions that are taking place. And, in some ways, Las Vegas has this incredible incredible ability, better said, about their ability, the community's ability to constantly redefine itself, right? Right. We can be both the, 99-cent shrimp and the $100 steak, and we can market that differently. Right? We can also be the leisure traveler, but also the business traveler, right? And I think you have to give some hat tip to the things that Steve Hill has been able to do, right? The renovation of the convention center and those type of things, the chairmanship that he's had, the leading role that he's had in bringing the Raiders here and the A's here and some of the other things that he's done.
How about the Loop underground?
Right, exactly. You want to talk about a visionary that is essentially building things all around us. We are watching a Hall of Fame career and he's still playing the game. And it's just unbelievable to be a part of. And we're kind of seeing all of those things happen in terms of the reinvestment. Beyond that, the question becomes what's next, right? What happens next, right? We've heard a lot about esports and e-gaming and some of those type of things, right? We've heard about transportation and what other things people want to build. The other piece is, that we're seeing things that are non-traditional, right? I think you got to look at things like Area 15. That was constructed, right? There's a lot of dialogue right now about the development of one or more movie studios. And are they going to have some type of amusement associated with them? Maybe that's a new draw to bring people here, right? But I don't think it's necessarily always having to reinvent ourselves relative to the physical infrastructure that is our tourism infrastructure. Although I do think that's important. I think what's happening is there's a new generation of people that are just now experiencing Las Vegas and saying, wow, that was really fun to go to a concert and then go stay at a hotel and eat at a great restaurant and shop at a great place. I think Las Vegas has naturally developed itself to be attractive to the next generation of folks, nightclubs and some of those type of things. And, we are constantly figuring out how to position ourselves to the 40 million people who are coming here. And so, look, I think it's going to be a combination of what's new, what's next, what do we continue to develop, what's going to be new and great about what we have coming online, as well as another generation of folks that are going to grow into the fact that being able to escape, being able to get away, going and having a great time is something that is universal. And I think, there were a lot of people that believed that a next generation of folks weren't going to be as attracted to Las Vegas. They are, right? And I think the other part is we're only now starting to see international visitation come back post-COVID. It's been pretty sluggish relative to that. I really like our chances in terms of international visitation continuing to drive some of the continued activity that we're having here.
Yeah, our friend Bo Bernard talks about the fun economy, right? And he bangs on that too. He says that still hasn't come up back to levels pre-COVID, the international travel. You also mentioned somebody who I was thinking, earlier we were talking off camera. Brian, your partner, says there's nobody works harder than you, but Steve Hill gets there. He gets close.
Yeah, look, he's a mentor and a friend to me. There's likely no greater asset to this state in terms of what he's done and how he's done it and how he thinks about it and how he works to develop than Steve Hill. Yeah. He is just a genius in his prime. And it is, you said it right? Having that capability, that intellect, that experience, and combining that with a work ethic that is tireless, formidable. Just purely formidable.
I agree. When he was in GOED, he was part of that push that we are now enjoying the benefits of this very purposeful diversification of our economy, right? Beyond just the tourism, hospitality, gaming that we were known for, into all the stuff we've talked about. But there's more, because now, as you know, better than all of us, we're talking about tech and manufacturing. And just the other day at the LVGA, we were talking about 10-year goals and how healthcare needs to play a huge part of it. So how do you see these new industries like tech, manufacturing, healthcare, renewable energy? How are they going to impact this economy that we've been talking about until now?
Look, I think they are all around us, right? I look, first of all, I think that there's a dialogue coming around economic development and thinking about it differently, right? You brought up healthcare. Right? I think we know that our community doesn't have enough healthcare. We have got some of the best doctors, some of the best hospitals in the entire world. We don't have enough of them. And that's a problem. It's hard to get in and get to see an appointment. And sometimes you have to wait longer. And some folks have to leave the state in order to make that work. Of course, those things are all, problematic for us. But what an opportunity. What an opportunity for us to say, okay, how do we think differently about our economic development policy to make this the best place for someone to come and be a doctor? And then you think about it in terms of the next level of what you talked about, right? We could go back and we could think about how medicine was provided in the 1980s, right? Very similar to how medicine is provided today. Although technology is advanced and some of those type of things, I don't want to minimize any of that. The training is obviously better, but you go to a doctor's appointment, you go and you sit down in the waiting room, and then you go in and then they weigh you and they take your temperature and your blood pressure, and then the doctor sees you and you do all of those type of things. In today's world, I don't know that that's necessarily the way it is. It strikes me as particularly important that with the good work that was done, I think we have to give Governor Sisolak credit for really pushing forward broadband during his administration and really making sure that every corner of Nevada was there. And then, Governor Lombardo certainly said that is something that we are going to finish under his administration, right? This now opens up things like telemedicine. Right? Where, doctors are there. And right now, one of the worst areas that we have in the state of Nevada right now is with regard to mental health, right? And the ability for us to bring up what I think is referred to as telepsychology. I don't know that I have that exactly right. The ability to sort of introduce that and have it in Nevada. We are doing good things in this regard. But we have rural areas of the state where it's really hard to get health care because there's just not enough critical mass to make that work. But if you start to use things like telemedicine and some of the other techniques that you can do, all of a sudden you open up entire opportunities, right? NV Energy is building the GreenLink project, which will connect Southern Nevada to Northern Nevada and open up new areas for things like geothermal and solar. I think that opens up all kinds of opportunities. I'll be honest with you, I don't have a client today that isn't a technology company. It doesn't matter whether they're in construction or whether they're in government. Technology is what's leading the charge. And people are worried about machine learning and AI and all of those type of things. Man, I am in the camp of, I don't think AI is going to replace a CEO or a manager, but I do believe that a CEO or a manager that utilizes AI is going to replace one who does not. And if we think about that in terms of the evolution of our economy and what it takes to diversify our economy, it is my position, and I believe that the best way for us to make sure that we get the type of diversification that I think we're always striving for in every one of these industries that we've talked about, make Nevada the best place for the businesses that are here to operate. Make sure that they can have their employees, that they can be profitable, that they can integrate into the community, that they have a reasonable degree of regulation and taxation and things along those lines. If we do that for the businesses that are here, other businesses will want to follow just because the ecosystem is one that is fertile for business investment. And I think that in and of itself is how we solve that problem, because we're not just good for hospitality. We're not just good for mining. We should be equally good for healthcare and for retailers and for wholesalers and for developers and for all of those type of things. That's what this community ought to be. Responsibly integrated relative to our broad economic goals.
That's well put, Jeremy. One more question about economic growth here and then how we're going to get there. And again, you were involved with some monumental, piece of legislation that increased the formula funding for K through 12 education. But there's still, I believe, opportunities to better align all the stuff you're talking about that exists today and will be coming is very different than our economy in the 70s and 80s and what the K through 12 system had, the talent pool that they had to provide to meet it. And so with all this evolution you're talking about, how do you see the role of that K through 12 system, whether it's the 5th largest school district in the nation and all the other auxiliary things that we have in the K through 12 system, charter schools and private schools here, some of the best on both sides. Again, last year we had the magnet school of the nation in SECTA. We're consistently rated in the top 10 for CTE. So there's bright spots, but also opportunities there. So love to hear your opinion about the role that K through 12 has to play to support what you just described.
Yeah, look, I don't think there's anything more important than K through 12. You and I've had this conversation before. I think education, public education, or education broadly defined, is the silver bullet, right? It addresses, poverty issues. It addresses equality issues. It addresses our economic issues in the community. A strong education system is a conditioned precedent to a strong economy. We have challenges today. The hard part is, in some of it, is that it took us 2 generations to get in to the problem that we're in. It's going to take some time to get back out. I don't know how much detail to go in, so you can cut me off if you need to. The long history since about the 1960s in terms of how we funded our K through 12 education K through 12 education was a circular funding formula. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes when we needed more money for K through 12 education, we would go in and we would raise something called the local school support tax. It's part of our sales tax. And we'd pat ourselves on the back and say, look at this, we put more money into K through 12 education. And then what we do is at the exact same time, we would lower the general fund that went to K through 12 education so that almost no more money, actually only part of the money actually went to K through 12 education, right? What this ended up doing was creating the expectation that there was more money that was there because that's what we said publicly. Those budgets would go to school districts like the Clark County School District that would then have to negotiate with the teachers union around that. Also very good people advocating on behalf of the teachers that are there, but because there was an expectation of more money versus what was actually there, what happened is in order to balance those budgets, we would cram more students into every classroom because it's the only way we could make the budget balance. And so for about 40 years, we constantly increased the number of kids per classroom. What a dangerous game to do. And at the same time, we only marginally funded K through 12 education. So even the increases that we have were at best, 20% less, 50% less. That's probably an exaggeration, but less than what national averages were relative to K through 12 education. In 2019, I had the opportunity to work with Senators Dennis and Woodhouse on a reform bill for the pupil-centered funding plan, right? That was passed. Governor Sisolak signed it into law. It is one of the things that I am most proud to have worked on. And what it did was stop that cycle. It said that every dollar that is dedicated to K through 12 education has to stay with K through 12 education. And by the way, you can't just lower the general fund. If overall revenues go up, the amount that ought to go up to K through 12 education ought to be there as well, right? That led, at least it created the foundational elements for Governor Lombardo to come forward and say, you know what? I'm going to fund K through 12 education. Now, he also said, I'm going to come back and expect for accountability. I want to see results associated with this. But he brought that forward. And in the 2023 legislative session, our legislature and this governor passed an unprecedented budget for K through 12 education. And what have we seen as a result of that, right? I mean, teacher vacancies are actually falling today. Right? We have seen some programs that have been enhanced as a result of this. We are seeing some improvement in terms of performance relative to that. It's not enough. We still have way too many schools that are 1- and 2-star schools. There's no doubt about that. There are all kinds of things that we can and must do better. But the idea that changing a formula that led to increased funding is somehow going to overnight change things. I mean, what Governor Lombardo and the legislature did last time was fully fund the weighted pupil dollars, right? Which means that kids that are at risk, the kids that are English language learners, the kids that are like even in GATE programs are now getting more money to recognize the fact that it takes more to help a kid that maybe doesn't speak the language to be able to be successful. And let's be clear, a kid that starts as an English language learner that learns English outperforms his or her English-only counterpart in terms of their performance in those schools. Those data are compelling to me relative to the benefits of finding out who we are. And this is who we are as a community. So we might as well embrace who we are, because I believe that our diversity is our single greatest asset as a state and certainly as a community. And what we've seen is some of that performance. It's amazing when you pay teachers and you recognize teachers and you honor what I don't think is a job, but rather a calling. They feel better about themselves. They want to be there. They want to succeed, right? When you let teachers teach and you give kids a fighting chance to be successful in actually learning, when you reduce class sizes a little bit, right? All of a sudden you start to see progress. The hard part is, that progress just getting started. And at least for many of the students, it's in the middle of a pandemic, for goodness sake. My wife is a first grade teacher, right? I will never forget when she came down and said, I can't do this. How do I teach a bunch of first graders how to read over the internet? I am not trained to do this. I don't even think that it is possible. emotional when you have like 35 of them, that how do you even think about doing that, right? We are going to be playing catch up relative to that. But I think it's going to be a generation until some of the changes that happened during the Sisolak administration and now under the Lombardo administration are actually going to be reflective. But I think when you go back and you see the work that Senator Woodhouse and Senator Dennis did under SB 528. Excuse me, no, that's not right. It's SB 524. 543.
I don't know how you remember that.
Obviously I don't, right? I think it's SB 543 now from 2019. And you go back to that. I think you're going to look back and believe that the work that they did was the foundation for why much of the changes were ultimately coming forward today. And look, I'm a big advocate for thinking about the ways in which our public education system should exist. I think there should be many choices out there. You talked about private schools. You talked about things like homeschooling. I'm a charters, all of those type of things. I'm an advocate for all of those things. But I also believe that every family should have a quality public school that should be a real choice, a legitimate choice for them. And I don't know that exists in every location that we have today.
So we still have a lot of work to do. Again, that's why I think I love when we get to partner on things like this and work on projects. I know you have not only your own personal knowledge and being in this spaces, but as you said, another member of the Aguero family has a big stake in education. She gives you that, and that's why I hear that passion in your voice. You are deeply connected to that experience of education. And so I'm grateful for that as well. But we've talked enough about work. Let's talk about you and your family a little bit. Tell us about your life outside of work. What do you and your wife and the family like to do when you're not working all those long hours helping Nevada grow?
Look, I mean, just being with family is kind of a big deal for us. My wife is a first grade teacher, and so you have to understand that our family celebrates everything, right? And she's got a passion and a zest for life that makes every day fun. It really does. I'm a very lucky man to be married to such a wonderful person. I've got a daughter who lives in New York City now. She's going to grad school there. Leaving your daughter in New York City is like leaving your daughter on the face of the moon. Yeah. It is just a different place, but she seems to be thriving there. I miss her every single day, but she's doing well. And then my younger son, Abe, he's very entrepreneurial. And so watching him develop and think and work on businesses and do things in that way is kind of a magical thing. We do a lot of things together as a family. We take great vacations and we love to travel. We take my mother-in-law to Disneyland for her birthday. So this is where I'm leaving tonight to go do that. I think we've done it for some 20 years. And that's like a big thing. She likes to see it decorated for Christmas. And so we like to do that. Look, me personally, I'd be lying to you if I said that my work and my hobby were not the same thing. I love what I do and I'm passionate about it. And particularly some of the projects that you and I've talked about where I kind of feel like I'm leaving the community better than I found it and sort of fulfilling my commitment back are really kind of important things. I like to play golf, although I'm god awful terrible at it. And during COVID, I learned to play chess. And so that's a hobby that I've taken up and I'm not too good at that either, but I'm continuing to try and improve. And I like that type of thing. My kids were a little younger. I coached soccer. You and I did basketball together, which was super fun. And so I had the opportunity to do all that. But as my kids get a little older, the ability to kind of experience your kids as adults is just a very different thing than experience your kids when they're young. And we've had the opportunity to travel together. Most recently this year, we went to Japan because when my kids graduate from high school, I let them choose anywhere they want to go. And we do that as a family, kind of the big thing we kind of save for to be able to do that. And, spending 2 weeks with your family in a country like that is kind of an amazing experience. And, 2 weeks is a lot of together time too, right? Good. As my grandfather used to call it, acute too much togetherness. But we loved it and we had a great time. And, they've just turned into such incredible people. And, as different as they are, there's a warmth there that comes with knowing that there's no single path to your kids becoming amazing people.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, Jeremy. So I guess I was falsely had hopes there that you would, you and Brian, who played youth soccer together, still found time now to put on the cleats and play some soccer, but you guys don't find any time. Huh?
I don't know. That would be pretty tough to be able to do, to find the time to do it. And, I'll be honest with you, I don't know that I'm in the shape to be able to do that kind of thing these days. But, Brian, he's got a pretty rich and full life too. And, I think he and I both believe in this idea of developed passions, and we both believe in family, and we both believe in community. And, when you have those sort of values, and I suppose, the reality that this is the community, the only community that we know, the part that you maybe don't bring up so much is having that friends and family here, right? Yeah. When this is the place you grew up in, I know for many people, this is the community that they chose. So maybe they don't have that same network, but boy, do we have some great friends here, and boy, do we have some great family here. And, the traditions, I have the opportunity to do work for Opportunity Village or the R&R Foundation or Nevada Child Seekers. And, having that type of connection with folks that maybe you don't see every day. It's kind of magical here, man. It's magical.
So, Jeremy, I think when you were going to high school at Valley, there was only, not as many as there are today. Now there's over 50 high schools. But if we do have a young man or woman out there who's 16, 17, 18 and thinking about their future, and they get to hear about this amazing story of Jeremy Aguero, who, as you just said, gets to really help shape the future of our state over the last few decades, but also finds the time to have a really meaningful and fulfilling family life and friends and created a business. I mean, that sounds like an amazing story. What advice would you give? I always think, if I could talk to my 18-year-old self, how much wisdom I could pass on. What would you tell an 18-year-old today? What kind of advice would you give them to say, you too can be a respected community leader, a successful business person like you?
Yeah. It's a hard question for me to answer. And the reason for it is I think that the pathways for young people today are very different than the pathways that they were for us. I'm going to start with get as much education as you can. And that doesn't always mean an education that's like going to college. I think learning, getting a trade, learning a skill, being good at whatever you do. I am a strong believer that, hard work pays off. And I think that's still true today. You also need some luck relative to that, right? I have 3 children, and my oldest son passed away a little over 2 years ago. And, what he always reminds me as we were sort of thinking about that is that the pathways that you take are not always easy, and they're not always clear. And, when you lose a son at too young, what it reminds you of how lucky every day truly is in this world. And, there is no silver lining to something along those lines, but the legacy that and the love that Jacob had and the love that I have for him is a driving force for me today. And so when you ask me what's sort of the advice, it's a life of advice. It's work hard, look for the opportunities. Don't be afraid to say yes. Don't be afraid to make a change. But whatever you decide to do, work hard at it and recognize that the choices that you make are the ones that are ultimately going to create the opportunities that you have. And don't get frustrated, because sometimes it takes a little bit of luck and sometimes it takes a few chances. And you know what? I failed in my career 1,000 times. I've made a bad choice. I have, done all of those type of things. But you know what? Fate favors the present. You show up, you work hard, you do what you say you're going to do, and you treat every day as a gift. And if you do that, I think those opportunities will be there, because the one thing that a rich person and a poor person has in equal measure is time, right? We are all given this incredible gift of 24 hours. And I don't know, one of the sort of New Year's resolution, and I'm not a big New Year's resolution kind of guy, but, the New Year's resolution that I had this year was to be where my feet are, right? To really focus on the things that are immediately in front of me. Because when Jacob passed away, you don't sort of feel like yourself. And what I would do is I would make myself a list every day, with the simplest stuff, return this call, tell your wife you love her, those type of things. And I became remarkably robotic relative to that. But doing those type of things was necessary for me to be able to try to get back to some sense of normalcy. And after some time, my lists became, a little different than they were at that point. And you start to get back to something that's there. What I find today is that if I can make my list and just be incredibly intentional about what I'm going to do today, and when I'm here, I want to be with Jaime. I want to be the best guest that I can be on a podcast that I'm excited to be a part of. And when I leave here and I go have lunch with a client, I want to be present there. And when, an employee comes into my office and wants to have a conversation, or my son wants to sit down, I don't want to be distracted and thinking about things. And I think throughout my life and throughout my career, oftentimes there was a tendency for me to be distracted sometimes. And I don't, maybe that's a gift that Jacob gave me. I don't know. I don't know exactly how to think about that. But being where your feet are and being committed to that day, I think, is an incredibly valuable lesson, and one that I would really encourage young people. Work hard, be present, and remember, every day is a gift.
Wow. Well, thank you, my friend, for sharing the story of Jacob. And, I think this. We just a few days ago were with other members of the Workforce Connections Board, Mary Beth Sewell from the Vegas Chamber, Tina Quigley from the LVGA, MJ Maynard from the RTC, and a panel with you. And we always say this, and I always say it to you, I think also personally, we're blessed to have you here in Southern Nevada. Not only are you a great, at what you do work-wise, but I enjoy being your friend. I learn from you all the time. I'm grateful you made the time to come here today. I so look forward to all the projects we still have in front of us. But now I'm going to pass the mic on to you one last time to share with us and finish the podcast with anything that you want to. Is there events with organizations you're involved with? There's so many. If you want to tell us a little bit about how to find applied analysis and see if anybody can explore a way that you can help them get the stuff they want to get done. This is your time. The mic is yours.
And I'll handle three things. First of all, if anyone wants to get us, Applied Analysis is online. Look us up. Reach out anytime. We're always happy to answer questions or be there to support this community. You ask about things that I'm working on that I'm very proud of. There's some things that I've been working on, but one in particular is the Campus for Hope project. During the 2023 legislative session, I had the honor to be able to work on legislation that was ultimately brought forward by Speaker Yeager and was really embraced by the legislature, that creates the opportunity for $200 million to go to a world-class facility to help people that are either experiencing homelessness or at risk of becoming homeless. And I think this is it is the resort industry that has formed a foundation and is raising the $100 million from the private sector, which I think is an incredible reflection of community commitment. And it is the public sector, local governments and state governments, that are coming together to work on the balance of the funding in order to make it work. And there is no, I would say, more important public-private partnership that I've seen to come together to kind of make that happen. And it's a project that I'm very proud of. It's still got some hurdles to get past, so I'm hopeful that can kind of get across the finish line. But if there's anything that I'm particularly proud of working on right now, it is that. And I want to certainly extend my thanks to all the elected officials, from the governor to legislative leadership, and most certainly the folks at WIN that spearheaded it, as well as MGM and Caesars that are a part of that particular project. And then finally, if there's, you said some kind words, and I think that that's a two-way street. We've known each other for a long time, and partnership is what makes things happen. But I need to tell you, man, if it wasn't for the other people, some of the folks that you mentioned and many others in this community, I would be nothing today, right? I don't have an opportunity to do anything without having partners that help us make sure that the workforce is developed, that are building our roads or our water systems or the infrastructure that make it work, or are helping to diversify our economy, or are leading us at the state or local level about the policies. Right? I am here to help carry the luggage for a community of leaders. And what is amazing to me here is the combination of leadership and partnership that this community has. And, like we talked about before, Steve Hill has been a remarkable mentor to me and pushed things like that forward. But folks like Guy Hobbs, folks like Billy Vasiliadis, people like Pat Mulroy and folks like Carol Villardo. I mean, what a legacy of leadership we have had. And I'm scratching the surface, of course. There's so many more that we could name. But what a legacy of people that have invested so much in this community, and frankly, man, so much in me. And that fact that we can pick up the phone and call each other and say, hey, I got this thing going on, and, I could really use some help and some guidance. The fact that those calls get returned, and that, everybody talks about silos and this and that. That's not the way this community works. I mean, there are problems that we have to deal with. But in reality, right, there are folks that are working every single day, you among them, that are just trying to leave it better than we found it, that are working hard to make that happen. And I just feel blessed beyond measure to have an opportunity to be a part of that. And I like we talked about a moment ago, I've just been lucky. I've been lucky. And so, I hope it continues for a little while.
Yeah, we do too. Well said, Jeremy. And again, I look forward to continuing to work together. I appreciate that you were here today. Thank you for making the time. It was a pleasure to spend time with you again.
This has been awesome, man. It just feels like two friends chatting, but I get the opportunity to talk on issues that really matter to the community and a venue that really matters to me. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Well, that's it for another episode of the WC Podcast. We hope to see you at a future one. Until then, stay safe. Jeremy, thank you for staying over to do our bonus segment called Against the Wall. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
The first segment is called Your Favorites. I'm going to give you a category. You're going to give me your favorite thing in that category. Let's start with an easy one. Your favorite food?
Arroz con pollo.
Your favorite beverage with dinner?
I'm kind of a water guy, so that's not very exciting, is it?
Fiji water is fine. Favorite car you've ever owned?
I had a Ford Mustang convertible, and I loved every second of being in that car.
Favorite musical group or artist?
The Police.
Favorite movie?
Dead Poets Society.
Favorite book?
Oh boy, that's a really hard one. On War by von Clausewitz.
Favorite course at UNLV's hospitality school?
Oh gosh, you're killing me here, Jaime.
You mentioned one earlier.
Well, but that wasn't in the hospitality program. Okay. So there was a market research one that was done by Stowe Shoemaker, and it was pretty fantastic.
Favorite course at UNLV's law school?
Oh, that's tax law. That's going to make me super exciting, isn't it?
Favorite college sports team?
UNLV. Come on.
Favorite professional sports team?
Look, I grew up a Miami Dolphins fan, but I got to give a hat tip to my hometown Raiders.
That's right. We all become Raiders fans. Very good. You made it through the first section. The second one, it gets tougher. So it's named Tough Choices. Okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Going to give you two. You hopefully can pick one. Vacation or staycation?
Vacation.
When you go to your vacation, would you rather drive or fly there?
Fly.
Once you get there, is it hotel or Airbnb?
Hotel. When
you retire, Jeremy, I know that's still far away, will it be on a ranch or in the city?
Look, I think it'll probably be in a city, but probably more than one city.
Oh, very good. And if you had a day on your own, would you like to spend it by the ocean or hiking in the mountains?
By the ocean.
If you were a superhero, would you rather have the ability to fly or breathe underwater?
Fly.
The ability to speak with animals or speak any foreign language?
Speak any foreign language.
Here's where it gets tough, Jeremy. Actions or words?
Actions.
Justice or grace?
Justice.
Analyst or advocate?
Analyst.
Now, Maggie Carter will say something about this, but let's see if you can pick. Converse or Adidas?
Converse.
She used to say that this young man 20 years ago used to cross Carson Street in his Converse, and his name was Jeremy Aguero.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad I learned from that.
All right. Final segment is called Finish the Sentence. I'm going to give you 75% of the sentence, 90%. You're going to finish it for me. In 2011, the UNLV Samboy School of Law alumnus of the year was
Jeremy Aguero.
If Jeremy could visit any place in the world, it would be
Paris.
The best part of living in Southern Nevada is
Family.
Jeremy's favorite thing about his job at Applied Analysis is
Getting to work for incredible clients and with remarkable people.
If Jeremy could travel back in time, he would travel to
The 1980s. They were great.
3 words that describe Jeremy are
Oh gosh, that's a hard one, Jaime. 3 words. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that one.
Think about how your wife would answer. What do you think she would say?
Okay. Oh my gosh. Doesn't clean up enough and those type of things. No. Look, I don't know how to describe myself. Cared about family. Maybe best I can do.
Family, work, right? You're a hard worker.
Oh yeah. Look, but if you're asking me for sort of 3 words, I would say family, friends, and work.
Love it.
But you got to put community in there too. I don't know. That's a
4
hard
words
one.
is fine.
I failed.
And doing the WC podcast here today with us, Jeremy, was
Fantastic.
well. Thank you for staying over and doing the bonus segment, Jeremy.
Thank you, sir.